Hi, Laura. People are signing on. Madison, Christina. All right, so hope the sound is okay. Not too loud. Today I'm at Fiorentina Cafe again. I've been here a couple times, but they have a really nice drink menu. The tables are a good height, and it's kind of quiet, so it's a good place to do Tipsy Tuesday. Plus, they let me do my whole setup with all the microphones, multiple devices, because I am again on Instagram and Facebook, and then I'll upload this to YouTube later. But it's important to have a place that'll let you spread out on a table with everything like this. Oh, here comes my drink. Grazie. Grazie. So today I am drinking. This is a Apricot Cosmopolitan. Well, it looks pink. Kind of tastes like apricot, I guess. No, grazie. Waving away the food. So, Apricot Cosmopolitan. This is not Italian at all, but that's okay because, like I said, this place has a great drink menu, so there's a lot of stuff I want to try. And it's just in a really fancy glass. So, as we usually do on Tipsy Tuesday, a quick update on how the virus is going. It continues to go up, more cases. We had another 10,000 today, 80 something deaths. And so they are adding more and more restrictions for us, starting, I think it was yesterday. Nothing big, nothing like before. But they make bars close earlier, restaurants have to be closed by midnight, and after 9 p.m., the authorities can close busy piazzas if they think it's needed. So again, not as bad as it was back in the spring, but it's definitely something, and it's kind of like building more and more. The worst thing, though, is the masks outside. Like, I understand why they're wanting us to do that, but it's miserable. I don't know if where you are you have to do that. Hi, Mom. Yeah, Scott, the one from last week was uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, wearing a mask outside is really hard because I walk like 7 miles and I'm a fast walker and it's just not easy to breathe with it. But that's what we have to do right now, so I don't want to pay €1,000 fine or be that guy, so I do it. So anyway, I mentioned that today I was going to share some stories about John Paul II, because his feast day is coming up in just a few days, and I have a few stories, and I like to tell stories, and so I'm going to share a few. So one is from my honeymoon, another one is from his funeral, and then I have one from his beatification, and another one from his canonization, and they're all good stories, I think. This is hard to drink out of because when I pick it up, it sloshes around everywhere. Oh, before I tell stories, there's a special guest. Look who it is. That's my kid. So, when you're hanging out at a bar and your 15-year-old kid walks in, what does that mean?
It's also a cafe. Just saying.
It's also a cafe. Are you going to get something?
Yeah, do I just order? Like, do I pay?
Yeah, tell the guy. No.
Not yet.
No, when the guy comes by, just tell him what you want.
Oh.
Do you want to come over here?
Okay.
I haven't started telling my stories yet. So my youngest is in catechism class, and this one just dropped her off. So now she's going to hang out with me for a few minutes. You can take your mask off now.
Oh, I see.
So, stories about John Paul II. I'm old or she's old? Who's old, Monica? Okay.
You, probably.
Grandma and Grandpa are watching. The first story. So this is a story about my honeymoon with her mom. So, like a lot of people my generation, like John Paul II he was their pope, like the only pope we knew, and everybody was excited about John Paul II. He brought a lot of people into the faith. He was pope for a long time, and so that's why. You can sit over there if you want.
I'll just sit here and watch.
Okay.
And read
This is
it.
the guy here. So I always loved John Paul II, and when I was married, we decided that we were going to come to Rome for the nuptial blessing. So the popes, if you're a newlywed, you can come to Rome. The bride wears a wedding dress, the husband wears a suit, and you get to meet the pope. And so my wife, she planned pretty much all of the wedding, and I guess which is pretty common. But it was my job to plan the honeymoon because I was the travel guy and I was the person that could do that. So we got married in January, and hello Scotland, and so that's January in Rome or in Europe altogether is very much the off season, and so when I started planning the honeymoon, I was looking around at where we could go. We knew we wanted to go to Rome, but I was thinking, why just go to Rome? We can go somewhere else too. And so that's when I discovered the discount airlines of Europe. So there's like Ryanair and EasyJet. And I started seeing these flights that cost like €1, literally €1 plus taxes. So it ended up coming out to like €14 or something. One flight I found was 99 cents. And so I just planned this elaborate honeymoon, which was really exhausting too, because we started in Rome, then we flew to Brussels. That was the most expensive flight. That was €20. Then from Brussels we went to London. That was €1. I think it was £1 maybe. And then from London we flew to Venice, and then we also went to Amsterdam. And this was over like a 1 week honeymoon. So just ridiculous. I don't recommend that to anybody. But part of the fun was I didn't tell Christina where we were going, and so each morning I'd be like, today we're going to, and then like make the big reveal. And she hated it. Like we both hated it because it was like, the other thing about these discount airlines is the flights are at like 5 a.m. and they're not always at the big airport, so you have to not go to the main airport in Rome, but the one that's even further out, or flying into Brussels. There was an airline that wasn't in the city center, so it was just ridiculous trip. But anyway, the Rome portion, that was the main part of the trip, was to meet John Paul II. And so, we had the wedding, and we stayed at a hotel for a couple nights in Atlanta. The wedding was at Christ the King, if you're familiar with Atlanta. And then she already had an apartment in Midtown, and so that's where we were going to be living. And so since we were in Midtown, I was like, well, let's just take MARTA, that's the metro or the subway or whatever. I was like, let's just take MARTA to the airport. And she's like, really? People will drive us to the airport? I was like, no, city living. We're gonna take the subway to the airport. And she was like, all right. And so I think this was Monday. So we were gonna meet the Pope on Wednesday at the audience. And so we get all of our stuff, and she has to take like a wedding dress, and I'm taking a suit and all that. And so we're not traveling very lightly. And so we go down the street, we get to the MARTA is what it's called in Atlanta, the subway, and we go down, and we're waiting for the train, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and it's taking forever. And we were cutting it pretty close already, just because that's often how I travel. And so it turns out a train like caught on fire on the tracks or something, but they weren't very like clear with what was going on. They were just like, oh, the train's running a little behind, should be here soon. And finally they're like, okay, there was a fire, but it's going to be cleared and you'll be able to leave soon. And of course she's like panicking, freaking out, and I'm like, no, it's fine, I'm sure this happens all the time. This is a Cosmopolitan, by the way. I don't think it has any apricot in it.
I don't know.
It was supposed to have apricot. I'll try to, maybe I'll have a second drink. Anyway, we're still waiting. And then they're like, okay, it's going to be like an hour before we get this fixed. And so she was like, see, I told you. And so I call up my good friend, Father Augustin Tron. He is the one that actually did the wedding. And I say, hey, can you take us to the airport? He's like, sure. So he picks us up at the train station, takes us to the airport, and we get there, and we were flying Lufthansa. And we get to the counter, and they're like, we just closed check-in, like the boarding is done or whatever. And so there was nothing they could do to get us on the plane. And we're like, but she has a wedding dress. And we're like, I'm really sorry, we can't get you on this flight. And so she was probably crying or cussing or something, I don't know. She wasn't happy. And so the people at the counter, like, we understand, we're sorry. I was like, but the train was late. Like, why'd you take the train? Because we're in the city. And anyway, what they were able to do is they were able to get us on a flight leaving the next day. I think it was the next day. Yeah, the next day. But the problem was that it would get us into Rome at noon on Wednesday. And the papal audience is at 12. So we had to get to Rome before like 9, so we'd have enough time to get to the audience. But there was no way to do that going through Frankfurt. So we kind of decided that you could just go order the juice. Yeah, just go order. So we realized there was no way we were going to make it. And we went back to the apartment, and I was in a lot of trouble. Like, I was sleeping on the couch that night under our wedding, or marriage rather. And then, so I just stayed up all night looking online for a flight that would get us in earlier. And I finally found a ticket. I don't remember what airline it was. It might have been United or something, that would get us into Rome at 10 a.m. The audience starts at 10:30, and so, but that was the best I could do. And this ticket cost more. It was a one-way ticket I had to buy. It cost more than the entire honeymoon, with all those like €1 flights, the hotels and all that. It was the most expensive ticket I ever bought, and it was not first class. It was like back of the plane. But it got us in barely with enough time to make it to meet the Pope. So the next day we went to the airport. I wore my suit. She wasn't going to wear a wedding dress on the airplane. So she had her wedding dress like shoved into a carry-on suitcase because we knew we were going to have to carry on. And we flew to Rome, and the flight attendants, they knew our situation and they were very accommodating. So they helped us get off the plane first. And like everybody else was very nice in the plane too. So they knew what was going on. So we were able to get off the plane very first. We ran through the airport, got through customs. Again, it was off season, so it wasn't very crowded. And then we got we got outside security and all that. And she had to put her wedding dress on. So she ran into the bathroom of Fiumicino Airport and put her wedding dress on there, which I'm sure looked ridiculous to people that were in the bathroom. And then, meanwhile, I'm outside trying to find a taxi, and the regular taxis, there was like a long line. I mean, again, it's off season, so it wasn't crazy. But I needed a taxi like right that minute. And so I found one of the illegal taxi drivers who charged us, it was probably like €150, or maybe they were on lira at the time, I don't remember, to drive us into the city. So an illegal taxi, and he drove so fast. And my wife still wasn't ready, so she was still getting dressed in the back seat of the taxi. And I kept seeing like the guy looking in the rearview mirror, like watching her get dressed in the back seat. I'm like, hey, keep your eyes on the road. But meanwhile, he's like zigzagging in and out of traffic. And it was very, very close. Again, Pope comes out at 10:30. We landed around 10. And so he drove us right up to St. Peter's Square. You can't do that anymore. We were able to get right out at St. Peter's Square. Didn't have time to get tickets. We were supposed to have these white tickets for the wedding blessing. Didn't have time to pick up our tickets. Didn't have time to drop off our luggage. So we dropped it off at the security checkpoint, or the luggage check, or whatever, like the coat check at St. Peter's. Thankfully, the audience was inside because it was January. So we ran into the coat check area, threw our bags down, grabbed the bag ticket or whatever, ran across the piazza. It was in the Paul VI Auditorium. We ran in just as the Pope was coming out. Like, even the Swiss Guard was like, it's too late. Like, we can't get you into the section. But they were able to get us in. But right as John was coming out, and this was like, he was very old at the time already. So he was kind of like, I think he was like wheeled in or something. But we got there. We made it. Again, my wife wasn't very happy about the whole situation. But I was like, see, I told you we'd make it. And anyway, so then after the audience, like, we have had no sleep, of course, so we're exhausted. And then we get to go up and meet the Pope. And I think we're like one of the last couples or something in the line. And we get to go up. And right before we go up, they say no kneeling. So we weren't allowed to kneel. And no kissing the ring. Weren't allowed to kiss the ring. So Pope Benedict wasn't the only, or Pope, who's the Pope? Pope Francis isn't the only Pope that didn't always like having his ring kissed. So we go up, and it's not every day you get to meet a Pope. So of course I'm going to kneel and kiss the ring, even though they said not to. And so I did. I knelt down, I kissed the ring, and then the official picture of us meeting the Pope is, he's now Cardinal Harvey, but he was the bishop from Milwaukee, maybe. He was the Pope's secretary or something like that. He was like the Pope's right-hand man. But the picture of us meeting the Pope, you see Cardinal Harvey like shaking his head, and he's like reaching over and grabbing us both by the collar and pulling us away. What is that? Pear juice. That's good. So I have Apricot Cosmopolitan, which I don't think is Apricot. I think you didn't hear me. I think it's just a regular Cosmopolitan. Anyway, that is good. So we met John Paul II, kissed the ring. The ring was very thin. It wasn't like, I would think a papal ring would be very substantial, thick, some kind of jewel. You can slide over more if you want. See half your face. Even though you're not talking, just listening. My kids just showed up off the street because she was in the neighborhood, so she wandered into the bar. But today I'm sharing stories of John Paul II. So anyway, when I met John Paul II, he smelled very popey. That's the only thing I remember. I don't remember what he said. He said something. He probably said, "Get up, don't kiss my ring," or something like that. But he had this what you would think a pope would smell like. Smelled like incense, kind of like old man. And so I still can kind of smell that smell. So all I remember his smell and how flimsy his ring was.
Wow.
Yeah. But we met a saint, so that's really cool. And then we walked around Rome and took pictures in her wedding dress. A really cool thing about if you're ever married and you come to Rome and you're supposed to be a newlywed, but they don't check anything. So if you just show up in a white dress, I don't know how it's going to go in the future because 2020 and all. But usually, if you just show up and you're wearing a white wedding dress and the guy's in a suit, or even just a white dress, the Swiss Guard just kind of send you up to the front. But what's so great, of course, meeting the Pope's really cool. But afterwards, you're wearing your wedding dress and you can walk around Rome and you can get all these great pictures. And so that's what we did. It started raining, which was a shame, but we have pictures of her walking around St. Peter's in her wedding dress or walking on the square. And everywhere we went, people would clap. So that was kind of cool. She doesn't have any JPII stories.
No.
But the next one actually does involve her.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So John Paul II story number 2. And I'm telling those stories today because his feast day is coming up in a few days. I think I'm going to need another drink. Definitely. Let me know if you see the guy. And tell him I want the Albicocca. Apricot. I don't think this is apricot. Apricot's not pink. It's gone. Okay. Uh-oh. Poor connection. We have a poor connection. We're back. Okay. Poor connection for a second. All right. So the second... No?
One more?
Sì, albicocca.
Apricot.
Sì, sì. Okay. Maybe that was the apricot. I didn't think apricot was pink. Comment on meeting the Pope. You had to have newlywed. Yeah, well, Pope Benedict, it was very strict. Like with tickets, you had to have the white ticket, and they would check as you went up. But it got a little lax with Pope Francis. Like I've literally taken people up that just wore a white dress. So, well, Mimi, when you come back, wear a white dress. I'll get you up there. Sorry, just reading Emily's comment here. Oh yeah, you wore your wedding dress all over because you got locked out. But it's nice. It's nice to be able to use your wedding dress again. So, JP2 story number 2 involves Amelia. So, when were you born?
2004.
Really? 2004. John Paul II died 2005. So she was born in December. And when John Paul II died, like a lot of you Catholics watching, you were probably glued to the TV the last few days while he was sick, and we kind of knew it was near the end. She was a newborn, just a couple months old, and I was watching, and they announced that he had died, and I was like, man, I really want to go to the funeral. And my wife, like I didn't say that out loud, I was just thinking in my head. My wife knew that I would want to go to the funeral, and she looked over at me and she said, you can go to the funeral under one condition. Your priest goes with you. And by my priest, she's referring to Father Augustine, who's a good friend of both of ours, and her godfather. And literally not like a minute later, Father Augustine calls and says, are we going to the funeral? And I was like, yeah, we're going to the funeral. And she was like, seriously? I was like, yeah, he just called. And so a friend of ours gave Father Augustine and I, what are those tickets called? Buddy passes on Delta, which back in 2005, maybe they were still worth something. I know now, like, buddy passes are kind of dangerous and you might get stuck in a city for months. But we got bumped up to first class, which is completely wasted on me because I'm terrified of flying. So I don't eat the food, I don't sleep, I don't really watch anything. I just stare out the window the entire flight waiting for it to crash, and I look at like the flight attendants to see if they look concerned. You know that. Why are you looking at me? So first class is wasted on me, but it was nice. I had more room to like squirm in my seat and be nervous. But anyway, we fly first class from Atlanta. We had to fly into Milan, so I guess we connected in New York, flew to Milan, and this trip wasn't planned at all. Obviously, we didn't know the Pope was going to be dead, or that we were going, and so we just showed up in Milan, went to the train station, and like he lived in Rome. He speaks Italian. I knew Rome very well. I'd never been to Milan. I think maybe he'd been to Milan or something, but we just picked like the first seedy train station motel we could find, which is ridiculous. We should have known better. So it was like bugs crawling around the room and stuff. It's terrible. And hi Mom again. So we're in Milan. We didn't go to the Duomo, like the fancy cathedral there, where they have some beautiful work, beautiful architecture. We didn't go there. We went to some church. I don't remember which church we went to because he had mass for us. We didn't go see St. Ambrose. We didn't go see the Last Supper. What we did do, though, is we found the local Apple reseller. So there wasn't an Apple store at the time, but they had like an Apple dealer. And they had just released, I think, the 30-inch Apple displays, and so we really wanted to see those. And so we went to the Apple store and spent like, I don't know, a couple hours there, like playing around with the Apple display. Grandma says hi.
Hi.
And so there's all these pictures of us in Milan, not at the Duomo, not looking at the Last Supper, but making poses like this at this new 30-inch Apple display. Like that's how geeky we were. But anyway, then the next day, we went down to Rome, took the train. We were able to stay at the NAC for at least a day, maybe two, I don't remember. So we stayed at the seminary, the North American College, for free, which was good. But then the next night, we had to go to a real hotel because, of course, everybody was coming into Rome for the funeral, so like cardinals and bishops. So we got booted out of the NAC. And we ended up staying at another kind of seedy motel, most expensive hotel I've ever stayed in. But it was just like one bed, bathroom with like a terrible shower. Grazie.
Prego, signore.
My second Apricot Cosmopolitan. I picked the Cosmopolitan because I'm talking about John Paul II, and he traveled a lot, so I guess he's kind of the Cosmopolitan Pope. Maybe that's a stretch. I should have ordered, I guess I could have ordered like Polish vodka or something. But anyway, it's an Apricot Cosmopolitan, and it's in a pretty glass. So anyway, we get to Rome, stay at the NAC. We walk around like St. Peter's Square. That's when everybody was lining up for hours to see the body. And we actually waited to see the body for, it was probably like 7 hours. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with St. Peter's Square, like we were down Conciliazione for hours. And we got closer and closer. And we finally got into like, you know, where the cars can park and stuff, that area. He decided it was taking too long, like 7 hours after we've been waiting. He was like, oh, this is taking too long, we should go. And I was like, seriously? And he's like, yeah, we should just go. And I was like, all right. And so we went like vestment shopping or something. So we didn't see the body. After waiting 7 hours in line, we just left. Still mad about that. He's a good friend, so we can get mad at each other. It's okay to get mad at priests sometimes for human type things. But anyway, we went to our hotel, and then the next morning was the funeral, and so we didn't know like what time we should be there. Like now, I know how to do papal events because I've been to hundreds of them, but at the time, I'd only been to a few papal events, like audiences, so I didn't really know what we needed to do. But he decided that we should get there at, I think it was 5 a.m. And so we slept until about 4. We woke up, and I think we took a bus or something to St. Peter's Square. He was smart enough to know not to line up on the right side of the piazza, which is where the metro stop is, and that's where most people come, is from the right side. But there's also a way to line up on the left side. And so we went over there, and there were like, I don't know, like 20 people in front of us or something. And so there was like nobody. So that was a perfect spot. And it was a lot of fun, like spending the night, or the morning rather, in line. Again, it was my first experience doing that, so I had a lot of fun. People were singing and saying the Santo Subito, like make him a saint now, basically is what it means. Have to make sure through my translator here. And so then when they opened security, again, only like 20 people in front of us, we were able to get close enough. I mean, there was plenty of sections that were reserved with seats and stuff for priests and people that can celebrate and all that. But we were able to get close enough that we could see the what are presidents called? World leaders, heads of state. That's the word I was looking for. We could see the heads of state. So like George W. Bush was there. Like I could see his face. Like that's how close we were able to get because we got there and got in the good line. And it was an amazing experience being there for the funeral and seeing Cardinal Ratzinger celebrated, and like he became our This is really good. You can't have any. Do you have to keep watching? 7:30. You have time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Again, my kid is here because she just wandered into the bar after I'd already started talking. Where was I? Oh, the funeral. So it was an awesome experience, and I'm so glad I got to do it. And then after that, we went up to Venice for a few days because we were flying on buddy passes. So the best flight out was through Venice, and by that point, there were so many people in Rome that it was hard to get out. So we spent like 3 or 4 days in Venice. It was a good trip. That's story number 2. So now, JP2 story number 3. What is this one? The beatification. So now I have a group. So I had already started the Catholic Traveler. I had already had. Was there a dad joke in there? Did I tell a dad joke? I don't know. Maybe I did. Beatification. So I had a group. This was with Lena Rulli. I think a lot of you know who that is. And we were taking a group to Greece and Turkey. And so the trip was all planned out. We had, I don't know how many people we had, probably 30 something. My groups are usually pretty small, but when I would do the Leno trips, we'd go up to like 30 something people. So we probably had like, let's say 35 people. And of course we planned these things like a year out. So hotels are booked, flights are booked, guides are booked, everything is booked. And on this trip we were taking a cruise to the Greek Isles. And so the plan was we'd fly into Athens. I think we had 1 or 2 nights in Athens. And then we'd go to the port. Then we'd take a cruise. I think it was a 4-night cruise that included Ephesus, Turkey, Mykonos, Patmos, Crete, Santorini. Then back to Athens, and we do Ephesus. No, not Ephesus. I already said Ephesus. What's the place in Greece? Corinth. The Corinthians. And Athens. Again, back to Athens. So, anyway, everything was set up. Everybody was signed up. The trip was not too far away. And then they announced the beatification of John Paul II. And I wake up really early. Especially when I lived in America, I'd always wake up at 4:27. And so I woke up and I made coffee and I went to my office and I sat down and I probably opened Twitter or something. I don't know what it was. But I saw like beatification date of JP2 announced. And I was like, oh, cool. I could probably do a trip around this. And I looked at the date and it's the very first day of Leno's pilgrimage. And so why 4:27? So 4:30 is too late and 4 o'clock is just silly, and 27 is my favorite number and it always has been. So 4:27. And why 4 instead of 5? Because 5 is way too late. Yeah. So that's why 4:27. And I still sometimes wake up, even though I don't set my alarm for 4:27 anymore. Sometimes I wake up at 4:27, just, I guess, out of habit. But it's not really necessary anymore because when I did it before, it was because I was working in America but planning stuff in Europe. So I wanted to be up in time to talk to like hotels and guides in the morning. And so it kind of made more sense. Now if I wake up at 4:27, it's nighttime in America, so I can like say goodnight to my parents. But I don't need to wake up at 4:27. So anyway, where was I? Oh, so they announced the date, and it was at the beginning of our Greece pilgrimage. Not our Italy pilgrimage, our Greece pilgrimage. And so I immediately emailed Leno and said, we have a problem. Because if you know Leno, you know that he is a huge John Paul II fan. He loves him. Plus he has a radio show and he does like newsy type stuff. So there was no way he was going to miss the beatification of his favorite pope. and I really wanted to be there too. And so what I did was I immediately contacted the hotel that I always use in Rome, Hotel Alamondi, and they had just announced it, and so I said, can I get like, I don't know how many, 16, 17 rooms for one night? And like in my head, like I was already thinking, okay, we go to Rome for one night, and then we go to Greece. And so as soon as Lino woke up, hi Kathleen, he said, yeah, we have to go to Rome. And so I wrote everyone in the group and I said, here's the deal. We're going to go to Rome for a night. What that means is that we're going to have to alter the trip a little bit, the Greece portion. So originally I think we were going to sleep in Santorini. Maybe? I don't know. But I had to change things around just a little bit, tweak it a little bit. It ended up being one less day in Athens. I was able to do all of that like within hours. So I woke up at 4:27, secured the hotel, contacted like my local driver, because again it's morning over here, and emailed Lino. As soon as Lino said yes, let's do it, I emailed the group. I contacted Delta, changed our flights. They did. I don't think they charged us. Maybe they charged us a change fee. They probably charged us a change fee, but I don't think it affected the cost that much. I could be wrong. Like people that are on that trip was like, yeah, you charged us $200 extra. I don't remember. But I was able to switch the flight so that we would fly into Rome, and then I booked the hotel for one night. The next day we flew a domestic airline, domestic meaning like inter-Europe airline, to Athens, and then we continued the trip as planned. Are you bored? You look bored. Didn't she look bored? If I'd known she was going to be here, we wouldn't be talking about John Paul II. We could talk about like kid stuff. So I think everyone except for a couple people. What does my wife do? That's a good question. So my wife is the teacher for the kids, and that's really a full-time job. So we've been homeschooling. Well, she's been homeschooling for about 7 years now. Yeah, and so Amelia is in high school. So my wife has to kind of. This is like a 4.0 student. Not her. I mean, she is too. But my wife was. But she's having to relearn like algebra 2 and chemistry and all that stuff like the night before teaching them. So that's her job. She's also a graphic designer, so she worked for a lot of movie companies, and she did some work for the Vatican, and she does work for me. Anyway. Sorry, I try to answer some of these questions as they pop up because I end up missing them if I don't. And that was totally off topic. So I lose my train of thought. Okay, so we changed the trip. I think everybody except for a couple people were all for switching the itinerary. And the people that weren't for it, they went along with it anyway. So it involved a lot of planning to change 36 people or so to get to Rome for one night. And so what I ended up doing is, because for my groups, I always go a couple days ahead of the groups. It's what I call a reconnaissance mission, where I scope out everything. Are you leaving?
Yeah.
Do you want to say bye?
Okay. Bye.
Amelia's leaving.
I'm gonna go home.
Oh.
What, do you want us to come back?
If you want, or you can go home. I don't care.
I'll ask her.
Just tell your mother what you're doing,
Okay.
because we have to get pizza.
Yeah.
Can you put your chair back? Sorry, she's leaving. I can center myself now. Bumped over a glass. All right, second. People are saying bye. Okay. So the beatification trip. It gets better. So I do the reconnaissance mission on a lot of my groups' trips because I want to make sure I know everything we're doing, like every sidewalk we're taking, every restaurant we go to, and a lot of these places, like even in Italy, I mean I don't do it anymore in Rome because I live here, But if I was taking a group to Venice, for example, like I did, it's been forever now because of all the restrictions, but a year ago I went to Venice, and I went a couple days ahead of the group, and I tried out the restaurants and all that. But I just want to make sure that everything is going smoothly. Even if it's a place that I've been to many times, I want to make sure that, sometimes restaurants change owners or things change. Anyway, that's why I do reconnaissance. So for this group, I wanted to go to Greece ahead of time because I don't take a lot of groups to Greece. I've only done it several times. So I left Atlanta. I flew to Athens, and I went through our entire time in Athens. So I went to all the restaurants. I checked all the menus. I talked to all the restaurant owners, explained, group 36 people, whatever, we're going to do this and this and this. I walked all the paths that we would take while we were in Athens. Went to the one church. There's only one Catholic church in Athens. There's four. I don't know why I just told you one. There's four. There's one at the port, which is way outside of town. There's two in the suburbs, and there's one in the city center. And so all of our masses in Athens happened at that church. So I went there, reconfirmed the masses. I went to the cruise company and made sure that the excursions were set up and all that. I did all that in a day. So I flew over Atlanta, probably New York, Athens, did everything. That's a full day. Went to sleep at the hotel we were staying in. The next day, flew to Rome. And that's when Lino and the whole radio crew flew in, producer and all that. And I think we had drinks, we went to a restaurant, we just talked about how everything was going to go. And then the next day the group arrived. And so I had no sleep. And so the group arrives, we all picked them up at the airport. And because this was a Greece trip, we were going to have to do all of Rome in a day. And obviously, that's not all of Rome, but it's a lot of Rome, the most we could do. And so we had to be very clear with everyone that this was not a Rome trip. So we weren't going to go to the Vatican museums because it would be impossible to get tickets at that point. Plus it takes 3 hours. So they weren't going to see the Sistine Chapel. I don't remember if we went to St. Peter's. I think we went to St. Peter's. I could be wrong. Probably not. We were not going to go to the Colosseum. We did drive by the Colosseum. But it was going to be Rome in a day. So I know we went to St. Paul outside the walls. We went to St. Peter's. And we went to Polese for dinner. And it was kind of a full day on the bus. We would jump off the bus, see a few things. And that was it. But for our dinner, so we went to Polese. It's one of Lino's favorites. That's where he had his wedding reception a couple years ago. It's one of my favorite restaurants. And anytime we go there, it's a big meal. And it takes hours. So I was thinking we would line up for the beatification, 4 a.m. like I did for the funeral. So went to dinner. We had this 3.5 hour dinner with lots of wine, which was probably not the smartest thing since the people were going to have to line up that night to go to beatification. And it was not a good decision. But as we walked back to the hotel, we saw that there was this huge line already. All of Poland was already here. And so we had to get right in line, straight from dinner. We went back to the hotel, grabbed our stuff, and lined up. And we ended up sleeping on the street. And once they opened security, we were one of the last groups in. They cut off security right behind my group. and we were able to get into the piazza. Like the people behind us, they were sitting on the outside of the columns and they couldn't see anything, which was, if I had done that to my people, I would have felt just terrible, even though it wouldn't have been my fault really. But we got into the piazza, they shut off security, we were able to get a seat kind of by the fountains, if you're familiar with the piazza, and so that was a great experience. And then straight from there, we went back to the hotel, picked up our stuff, went to the airport. We had a late night flight to Athens, flew to Athens. I think we went straight to the hotel. We didn't have dinner, probably. Went straight to the hotel, went to sleep, and then the next day was the day that our cruise began. And so we were going straight from our hotel to the port to get on our cruise, and I went to sleep and I had my alarm set, and then my phone rang and I was like, who's calling me? And I pick up the phone and it was Lino, and he said, we're on the bus, where are you? And then I realized that it was already like bus time. Like the whole group was sitting on the bus and I was asleep. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm just talking to the front desk about the bill. I'll be right there. I lied. He knows that now. And then I don't know how I did it, but I got dressed like super fast. Because remember, I flew overnight, can't sleep on planes because I'm terrified of crashing, so I'm just waiting for that moment that we go down. I land in Athens, full day planning everything, fly immediately to Rome, meet with Lino and his radio crew, plan all that stuff, and then we're sleeping on the street, which, like sleeping, I don't think anybody slept. And then beatification, and then we fly to Rome, or Athens rather. So it had been days since I had slept, so I overslept. But I got ready super fast and made it on the bus, and we made the cruise in time. But it was an exciting day. So that's story number 3, right? Yeah. Wedding, funeral, beatification. So now the 4th story. I'm doing good on time. So the 4th story is again with Lino. This is the canonization of John Paul II. And I'm going to drink a little more of my Apricot Cosmopolitan, which kind of just hit me. This is a strong drink. And this is my second one. So the canonization, Lino and I planned the trip around the canonization. So it wasn't like squeezing in Rome in a day. So I planned to come to the canonization, and we had a great group of people. We come to Rome. I think, was it planned around the canonization? No, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was planned around the canonization. But we went to Assisi the night before the canonization, and it was just so packed. Like, I share a picture of it pretty much every year. Assisi was wall-to-wall people. Like, just walking down a street was shoulder to shoulder, squished. It was miserable, which is nothing like the Assisi that people experience when I take them for trips. So I feel bad about that for those people that experienced Assisi there on that trip. What are you going to do? But, okay, so the canonization, we get back to Rome after a couple nights in Assisi. And again, I'm very experienced at this point with how papal events are. And so I realized that we're going to have to line up really, really early, because this was the canonization not only of John Paul II, which means the entire country of Poland was in Rome, but also, wasn't it John the 23rd too, canonized at the same time? I think so. So all of Italy was here too, at least all of Venice. And so it was very, very crowded. and I knew that we were going to have to get in line just stupid early. And so, if I'm remembering correctly, we had a big lunch that day. We didn't do dinner. Dinner was on your own. And then I told everyone we were going to line up at like 10 a.m. And so at 10 o'clock, we get in line, or we walk towards St. Peter's Basilica. And I'm thinking that it would be like other papal events where the line is down Conciliazione. That's that street that goes from the castle straight to St. Peter's Basilica. But it wasn't. I actually went. Why was Assisi so crowded? Because pretty much every town outside of Rome was crowded because every hotel in Rome was fully booked. And so a lot of people stayed outside of Rome, and then the night before the canonization, they drove in and lined up. And so that's why Assisi was so crowded. Plus, everybody was in Italy. All these pilgrimages from not only America, but just all over the world. And so it was just really crowded. I think they say like 1 million people were in Rome for the canonization. It was rough. So Assisi was super crowded. But anyway, I thought the line was going to be down Conciliazione, but they kind of like spread it out to the side streets. And so, as I was saying, I went there earlier in the day, that's right. Earlier in the day, I went to the line and I talked to the security guy and I said, is the line starting here? And he said, yes. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get my group right here. So by the time we showed up, they had decided the line was not going to start there on Conciliazione, which again, if you're familiar with Rome, it's the road that crosses Conciliazione, so like where the buses go by. I thought it would start there because that's where a lot of the lines do start, but it was going to start instead on a side street, and then they were going to open the side streets and merge them in to Conciliazione. So when we showed up at 10 or whatever time it was, 11 or something, we had to line up on a side street. And I have always gotten my groups into basically the front row of every papal event, whether it's a mass or an audience. I'm really good at getting my people up front because I know what I'm doing, a lot of experience and all that. But with this, I just completely was not expecting what they had set up. So, again, if you're familiar with St. Peter's, for those of you that have been here, Conciliazione runs straight from the castle to St. Peter's, but then there is a street that runs parallel, but it kind of goes from the castle to like outside the square. And so the line for us was on that outer street. So it runs parallel. It runs parallel to Conciliazione, but it's not where I wanted my people to be. And so we're there, and again, it's late night, but not really morning yet. And yes, hi Gloria, Scala Santa is open. So yeah, we're on this street, parallel to Conciliazione, right by the porta potties, which is a good place to be if you're going to spend the night. But I kind of, in my head, started thinking, this is where we're going to be for the canonization. And I felt awful. Like, I felt so bad for everyone that was there. And then, but it was good because we had a place to sit. So some of the people were sitting down, maybe a couple of people were laying down. It was very relaxed and chill. They didn't know, like the people didn't know that in my head I'm thinking we're going to celebrate the canonization of John Paul II right by the porta potties. So they were like in a good festive spirit, I guess. But then an ambulance came through. And so, the street is from the wall to the wall is full of people. And the ambulance has to get through the people. And so everybody stood up, moved to the side so the ambulance could get through. And so, again, I think we had like 30-something people. I don't remember how many exactly. Probably should have done my homework. And most of them went to the canonization. Some decided they just wanted to be in Rome for the canonization. They didn't need to be at the Mass. So they watched it on TV, which I completely understood because sleeping on the street isn't for everyone. But as the ambulance came through, the 20 or so people that I had, I was like, I know what's going to happen when this ambulance goes by. All the people behind us are going to curve in. And I learned that from all my years working in the music industry and being at concerts with things like mosh pits and stuff like that. And I'm looking at my watch because Instagram's going to cut us off in 3 minutes. If you're on Instagram, I'm going to stop this and start it again. And if you're on Facebook, you just have to wait a second. So, Instagram, I'm about to stop the live feed and start it back because if we hit 60 minutes in 2 minutes, it's just going to cancel it. So, Facebook, hold on a second. Instagram, don't leave. Come back because you have to hear the end of the story because it gets better. Hold on, Facebook. This just takes a second. I have to stop Instagram because Instagram only allows me 60 minutes. Sorry. It's still starting. Okay, it's done. I am sharing. Hi Dee. I just talked about one of the trips you were on. You missed it. Okay, I need to restart Instagram. I just misspelled Tuesday, so I probably shouldn't have ordered a second drink. My mom's on Instagram, so she won't hear that, so that's okay. Alright. Sorry, Facebook. Blame Instagram for this. Alright, and now I can restart Instagram. And where is Amelia? Amelia went to pick up Lily, who is at confirmation class at the church right by the bar. Daniel Rabbit is here. I just told a story about a trip that you were on, Daniel. Alright, so Instagram is jumping back. Whoa, both of my kids are here now. Do you want to sit down? Wait, they can't see on Instagram. Here's Lily. Here's Amelia. Hi, Kathy Warren. It's good to see you here. So Instagram is jumping back on. Looks like almost everyone is back. Both my kids showed up, so I guess confirmation is over. Did you learn anything? My kids don't learn anything at confirmation because my mom and my wife are very good catechists. And so they don't learn anything at the confirmation classes. But they have to go through them anyway. Alright, so Facebook is still here. Thanks for waiting for the Instagram people to come back. Both my kids are here, so I'll move this a little bit so you can see them. Just drove through Atlanta. Oh, my parents are on I-20 in Villarica. I'm glad you waved at them. Mimi says hi, Lily. They were in Jordan with us. In Italy. Alright, so for those just coming back, or if you're just joining us, I'm talking about John Paul II. On Instagram, I went over a little bit, so I didn't want to cut you off. I am drinking a Apricot Cosmopolitan. Hi, Jeanette. Good to see you here. Where am I? Cafe Fiorentina. And my kids just wandered into a bar. So I'm telling the story. If you're just joining us, I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. You'll have to watch the replay. I'm telling the story about John Paul II, the canonization. So I have my group in line on a parallel street to Conciliazione, and it had just occurred to me that my group is going... Did you want to get something? Like a juice? You can get a juice. Have Amelia get it for you. Go get it. So I just had realized that my group was going to be spending the canonization of John Paul II, which they kind of signed up for, by the porta potties on a street outside of St. Peter's Basilica, so they wouldn't see anything. And I was feeling terrible about this. And so so I mentioned an ambulance had, I'm sorry, I have to like reprocess everything after my second Apricot Cosmopolitan. So an ambulance had just drove through the street we were on. My people had plenty of room to stretch out and lay down and sit, and they were comfortable. So an ambulance was coming down our street, which is terrible for whoever the ambulance was going to. But I, in my head, remembered from all my years of going to concerts, because I worked in the music industry for 10 years or longer, that when something big comes through, maybe on a mosh pit or whatever, that it's going to create this like vacuum. And it's going to clear a space, and that everyone behind that space is going to go into that space. And so I gathered like all my 20 plus people or however many people were with me, and I said, like, I went into like I'm the boss mode, which is not my personality or temperament at all, but I was like, follow me now. And so I ran through.
Devo preparare il conto, signora, che devo fare?
What?
Vuoi prendere via o...
Conto? For me? Amelia, you talk to her. Ask questions. Oh, sì, fammi la conto.
Lei voleva pagare?
Sì. Scusa, sì. Scusa. Talk to her, man. My kid just went to order something, and the lady didn't know if she should add it to my check.
No, she was going to have us pay their bill. I don't know what's going on.
Right, so she was talking to him, saying add it to his bill.
Oh, okay. I don't understand.
That's the problem when your kids show up at your bar.
Look like I know Italian.
Sorry, I'm like way off topic here. Okay, so there's this big vacuum of people coming through. Here, get in here. Your mother's watching now. There's this big vacuum of people like coming behind us to follow the ambulance. And so I made sure all my people were in that vacuum. And so we all start rushing towards where the ambulance is going, and then the ambulance turns towards Conciliazione, and you can take your masks off or like at a table. It's my kids. Can't see Amelia. And so we end up on the street now that's perpendicular to Conciliazione. So that's a much better place to be. But so many people did what I told my group to do that we're now like packed in so tight on this street that it's hard to take a breath. Like it's like this. You can't lift your arms up. You couldn't take your phone out to take a picture. It was miserable. You know what I'm talking about, that street?
That street where you almost died.
The street where I almost died. And so it's a better location because I could see in front of us that Conciliazione is open. So in my head I'm thinking, eventually they're going to open that barricade that's in front of us on this street and let us onto Conciliazione. And even if we can't get close, we'll at least be able to see St. Peter's instead of like a porta potty. And so the downside is that people in my group are having panic attacks. The girls are so cute. I agree, they are cute. Even if they're in a bar. So the downside is that we can't breathe, people are having panic attacks. The porta potty's nowhere near us anymore, so if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, because it's like 11 p.m., and the mass isn't until 10 a.m., so we've got, what is that, 11 hours ahead of us before the mass even begins? So I'm having trouble breathing because the crowd is so tight. It's hard to explain how crowded this was, but some people would like fall asleep. Like you could see people around us falling asleep, standing up, but they wouldn't fall over because there's nowhere to go. So you're just kind of like sleeping and you're like this. And it was, if you don't like crowded spaces, this was the worst possible place to be. This is the only time in what's now nearly 15 years of group trips, 16 years, that I have thought about leaving my group. I actually thought in my head that maybe I can tell them I'm going. No, Sandra, I've been on the Paris subway. It's more crowded than that. But when you're on the Paris subway or like any subway and it's really crowded, you know that eventually you're going to get off. It's going to stop and you can get off the metro. But when you're in a line that's not even supposed to open for 11 hours, you start to have really bad thoughts. So I started thinking that maybe I can tell my group that I'm going to sneak away and go to the bathroom. But really what I would do is go home and go to sleep in my bed. That's the only time I've ever thought about leaving my group. That's how bad it was. Like I would never leave my group. I would never do that to them. But at this point I was thinking about it. And then a little miracle happened. I looked up towards Conciliazione. Again, that's where we want to be. And I saw that the security there, and this is like a full city block, and we're kind of in the middle of all of that. But I saw that the security guard was letting like 2 people go through the barricade. I don't know why. Maybe there was like an emergency or something like that. But I was thinking, if I can get my people up there, again, we can't even breathe. That's how tight it is. But I'm thinking, if I can get them up there, I can convince that guy to let all my people onto the street. Because I'm good at doing that. And so I told my 20-something people to follow me, and they're like, where are we going to follow you? Like, we can't even move. And I was like, just trust me. And so I start making my way through this crowd. I don't know how. Again, I can't breathe, but I can weave in and out of traffic. Again, I think it's all those years of concerts and mosh pits and things like that. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for that experience. But I was able to get us up to the barricade. And then I talked, Lisa says, how big was my group? The group was like 30-something people, but only 28 maybe went to the canonization. And so I was able to get us to the barricade. And I didn't speak Italian, but somehow I was able to convince the guy that was security at the barricade to let us through. And so I popped through first. It was like being born again, because popping out of that tight space and being able to breathe and move. And then I was like, yeah, this is my person, this is my person, this is my person. And then some rando tried to get through. I was like, nope, sorry. But I got all my group through, and we were able to run up Conciliazione all the way to the end of the street, where like the piazza area starts. So not like the actual square, but kind of just outside it. And then we had all this room because we were the first ones there, so we got to sit down. Some people slept, they got to rest, and it was just a really, really nice night. After all that, I really thought I was going to die. Like, I think I'm going to die on airplanes, and I'm always thinking I'm going to die, but this time I really thought I was going to die, and I thought all these other people in my group were going to die just by getting smushed. And so that street that we were on where I thought I was going to die is right by our apartment. And so we walk down that street all the time. Like, no matter where we're going in Rome, we walk down that street. And what do I say, girls, when we go down that street?
Remember that time I almost died here?
I try to tell them that story every time. It's like, hey, girls, have I ever told you about the time I almost died on this street? And they're like, yes, Dad. That's the story of how I almost died. Now, there's more. So then, after we spent our whole glorious night comfortable sleeping on the street, like, there's people that somehow, like, brought guitars and they're playing music, and it's just a fun night. I will not be ordering a third. So, when they finally opened security, they let everybody come up the street a little further. And again, this only makes sense if you've been here, but there's a couple buildings that have these, what are they called? Vestibules? I don't know. Little pathways that buildings have with columns and stuff. They start letting people up the street, but for some reason they move everyone into this covered area. And so then it got all crowded again. And it was almost like the entire, kids are chatting. It was almost like the entire group was one living being. Because as we're standing there, it's moving, like we're swaying like this. Not by choice, but kind of back and forth and side to side. It was really, really freaky. And then it opened up. We ended up in the piazza. Again, we were at the very front of the line. And so the way security worked, we were the first through security. And we ended up on the very front row of, I guess you would say, general admission, because in front of us were all the people that were in seats. So I had seats set up for concelebrants and things like that. But we ended up in the very front of the regular section. Well, I say the very front. I think there may have been like a couple people in front of us, like one person between the barricade, and then behind us was all smushed. So for the next few hours before the mass began, we were just like this, and the people in front of us, and smushed behind us. And the crazy part is that it was really only 3 rows of people that were smushed up against the barricades, my group being one of them. And then right behind that, it was just wide open, and people were sitting on the ground and relaxed. And so my whole group was standing like this, like smushed up against people on the barricade for hours, waiting for the mass to begin, throughout the whole mass, and then after the mass was over. So it wasn't the most comfortable mass, but it worked out. That's my story. That's all 4 stories. That was an hour and 15 minutes of me talking. And you haven't had a lot of questions, so I guess there's not a lot of questions tonight. Do you have anything to say, girls? Do you have any questions? I told 4 stories about John Paul II and Rome and drinking. Paris stores crowded during Christmas. Yeah. What is fall like in Italy? It's beautiful. pumpkin flavored nothing here. We are set to get a Starbucks in Rome soon, and so there's only a couple. There are Milan, none in Rome, and I'm hoping that they will have a pumpkin spice latte. Because while I love like real coffee that you get in Italy, I miss the frou-frou stuff. How's school going? I just sneezed. Everybody in here just is looking at me. But it's allergies, it's not coronavirus. Any other questions? Because, like I said, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. Surely I can't talk anymore. I'm scrolling through. Questions. I don't know how I talk for an hour. Let me give you a couple other updates. So, this past Saturday, I started Second Cup Saturday, which is kind of like Tipsy Tuesday, but shorter. It's like 15-20 minutes. But it's where I give news of Rome, in Italy, or wherever I am. Just things going on here. And so, the first one I did, I had, was it 900? No. Yeah, 900 viewers on Facebook. So it's a good time. It's 3:30 Rome time. I did it on Instagram and Facebook, but I had a lot more people on Facebook. I guess that's when everybody's checking Facebook. What?
I just hit her with my glasses.
Oh, that's when everybody's checking Facebook. Is like 9:30 Eastern time. Second Cup Saturdays. It's where I go to a different cafe around Rome, and I just talk about news. So it's not really stories. It's just kind of what's going on in Italy. I have another patrons event coming up. I'm going to do a Jackie Asks How Did the Saturday Thing Go? It went really well. It was fun. And it's on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube/The Catholic Traveler, you can watch the replay. I have another patrons event. So the patrons thing is going really well. I think it's 189 patrons. 189 patrons right now. And I'm going to do another live event soon. I think maybe Saturday. I haven't even told them yet, but I'm telling all of you. But another live event Saturday, right after the Second Cup Saturday. So I'm really excited about that. That's kind of my only job now, is doing videos and stuff for you. And the podcast. So I mentioned Tuesday, two Cosmopolitans. I mentioned last Tuesday podcast. So I'm turning Tipsy Tuesday into a podcast because so many people listen to it like while they're driving or working out. I'm doing the Saturday thing as a podcast. It's a video live, but podcast after the fact. And I'm also doing a traditional podcast, which will be about 30 minutes long, and it's more of a traditional type podcast, telling stories and things like that. So that's launching this week. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, which I assume because you're here, you'll see that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and it's like 8:20, so we're going to go have dinner. Starving. Anyway, ciao. Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the stories. Talk to you soon. Say bye, girls.